portion of this video is sponsored by Keeps. So I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time now, and this is sort of a list of cameras that I personally want to see Sony update. Don't take this too seriously, this is just for fun, but also let me know what cameras you guys want to see get updated and what are some of those features and upgrades you want to see in those cameras. Now, due to the whole global chip shortage, I don't think we'll see most of these cameras on my list get updated. A few, sure, but a majority, probably not. For example, I would love to see an update for the RX1R, the RX1R Mark III. So the RX1 models are sort of under the radar. Not many people know about them, right? Primarily due to several factors. But first, let me explain what it is. This is an RX style camera. You know, those famous tiny compact point and shoot cameras, but instead of a 1-inch sensor, this thing has a whole whopping full frame sensor. That's right, full frame sensor in this tiny little body. Now, it's not an interchangeable lens camera. I do wish it was that, but we have a fixed 35mm f2, and it's not bad. This is very nice for street photography, and overall, just a really nice everyday kind of carry camera that you would bring with you for full frame results. Now, the body type of this camera harkens the like of the Leica Q2 and the more recent Fuji X100V or 5. These are palm-sized, high-quality cameras for extreme enthusiasts. Now, despite the popularity of Sony cameras today, 2022, why do people not know about this camera? For one, the latest model, the RX1R Mark II, came out around the same time, the same generation as the a7R II, which was back in 2015, nearly 7 years ago. Things didn't get crazy until 2018 when Sony launched their a7 III. And reason number two, the price tag. Holy cheeseball, is B&H still selling this camera the same price when it was originally launched, $3,200. That's pricey. Yeah, I can kind of see why people aren't talking about this camera. That is a tough pill for people to swallow back then and even now. But in between that 7 years time, this camera was ahead of its game. And for $3,200, it can be justifiable. But let's focus on the now, right? What do I want to see in the next update? I want to see this thing get upgraded with the same processor and the same sensor as the a7R IV. I want to see this get all the new real-time autofocus tracking for humans, animal, birds in both photo mode and video mode. I want to see some 4K capability. 4K 60 8-bit would be nice, but I'll settle for 4K 30. Give me USB-C, give me improved battery life, give me the new menu system, and support for the new Sony digital mics on the hot shoe. Flip screen. You know, the tilt screen is fine. I don't need this to be a flip out screen. Just keep it the minimal compact form factor the way that it is. And I think we can also keep this fixed 35mm f2 lens. It would be super game changer if they made this compact camera to be interchangeable, but I don't think it will happen largely because of the a7C. And quite frankly, I think the reason why we haven't seen the next iteration for this camera is because of the a7C. Now, if there were going to be an RX1R Mark III for a palm-sized full-frame camera, I would gladly pay $3,200 for it. Portability and high quality comes at a price, my friend, and I would gladly pay to save some weight off my back and just focus on having fun taking photos and videos with the camera. Because as it stands right now, I don't want to be paying $3,200 for terrible battery life. It uses the same battery as the RX100, but I don't need them to beef up the battery or the grip or anything, but I really believe that the new processor will help it run more efficiently. On top of that, it would definitely help it run smoother because the UI from the reviews that I saw and the little time that I had to play with it, it's a wee bit slow. And overall, it's just really showing its age, especially the autofocus system, the menu, etc. But yeah, I don't think it's coming. I'm happy to be wrong though. But like I already mentioned, there's the a7C. People are gonna be like, just slap on the 35mm 1.8, save some money and move on with your life, right? But here's the thing, the RX1R still wins in terms of form factor. But again, that price tag will only likely attract those ultra high-end enthusiasts. And lastly, the chips are kinda stacked against it, or lack of chips. But here's the thing, Sony has always been not against trying new things and supporting these ultra high-end enthusiast products, as we can see from their more recent Xperia phone line. So that's why I have a little bit of hope that we might see the RX1R Mark III. Now, if you're wondering about the lighting difference, because I actually have to close my blinds, All right, so moving on, another thing on the list that I have here that I don't think will get updated, but I would like to see is actually another RX camera, which is from the RX10 series, a beefy 1-inch sensor camera. So the RX10 Mark IV came out in 2017, and this thing is nuts. This lens is packing here. 24 to 600 millimeter f2.4 to f4 with optical image stabilization. For hobby bird photographers, hobby sports photographers, landscape, city, architecture, street, travel, vacation, this is like the everything camera right here. On top of that, it can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second, 1080p up to 120, and because this is an RX camera, it can shoot slow motion up to 1,000 frames per second. Not to mention, this thing has S-Log 3 support. We have mic jack, headphone jack. For us video guys, like holy shit, this thing is packing. But the stills capability is even more insane. The processor is practically like the A9. 24 frames per second continuous burst shooting for photos is actually 4 more than the A9. Anti-distortion shutter, 1/32,000 shutter speed, and it's even got a hot shoe here for flash and a mic support. It's kind of amazing as it is already. Does it even really need an upgrade? Maybe not immediately, but here's what I want to see. Can we expect 30 frames per second for stills now? You know, make it the same speed as the A1. I mean, why not? The RX10 Mark IV has A9 capabilities. Can we see 4K 60p? I mean, I think it's fair to start seeing 4K 60 in the more consumer-based cameras. 10-bit 422 might be a stretch. I will settle for 10-bit 420 because that would be awesome for any S-Log shooters or HDR, HLG shooters, but I wouldn't be mad if they kept it still at 8-bit. While they're at it, maybe give us the new Cinetone picture profile. Goes without saying, but this thing does need a new menu system. But the autofocus. Oh man, animal and bird eye autofocus is now a thing in both photo mode and in video mode. So with the 600 millimeter on this lens being so highly used for those types of photography, it ain't a stretch. It is not a stretch to ask for those new features. But while we're at it, can we go the distance? Can we go 24 to 800 millimeter, 24 to 1,000 millimeter optically? If not, maybe find some way to support higher clarity when we digitally zoom to those types of distance, because after all, this is a distance camera. It's what it's all about. But if it has to say 600 millimeters, hey, I'm totally cool with that too. At the very least though, I would like to see better high ISO performance on the camera. That'd be insane. Now battery, whew, I think we can definitely bump this camera up from NP-FW50 batteries to the new FZ100 batteries, the same style as the modern day full frame camera. It already has the grip size to support it already, so I don't see why not. So that would be my hope for the RX10 Mark V. Now before we move on with the list, just a quick word from our sponsor. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men keep their hair. 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. I'm 30, whoa. If you're constantly pulling hair trying to make a decision on what gear to buy or what spec's gonna be the next Sony camera like me, chances are you're getting bald. But Keeps will keep you covered, whether you're looking to prevent hair loss, stimulate growth, or just wanting to take better care of it. It's clinically proven treatments with 24/7 care and support, and their physicians will help you select the right products and treatments for your specific conditions and hair goals, all without needing to visit a doctor's office or pharmacy. With my link below, you can get 50% off your first order, and it'll be delivered right to your door. As much as my parents would have loved for me to be a doctor, I'm not. So make sure you get more information with the link below. Thanks for listening. Now back to the video. Okay, I swear to you guys that this list doesn't have just RX cameras, okay? I mean, like, I do have one more RX cameras to finish off, but I promise you I have other cameras to talk about. But I think you can sort of see a trend here, right? I love the smaller compact stuff, and I kind of want Sony to return to their roots. After all, they started off making smaller, high-quality, compact cameras. I mean, that's the whole point of the mirrorless system. Am I right? So I do want to see an update for their entire line, be it the 1-inch sensor, the APS-C, and even the full-frame stuff. So like I said, I just want to finish it off with the RX100 just because I am a fan of the RX100 Mark VII. It's something that I own and use on a consistent basis. But I'll get through this really quickly just because it shares a lot of the same ask as the RX10 Mark V. Mainly, can we see 30 frames per second on the still side of things? I mean, why not? The Mark VII has A9 capabilities already. 30 frames per second would just make it have A1 capabilities in the camera. 4K 60p, again, I just want to see more 4K 60p in the consumer-based products. I don't don't think this camera needs 10-bit 422 or 420. I would be happy if it has it, but if they keep it 8-bit, fine, no problem. Give us that Cinetone picture profile. Goes without saying, but we need that new menu system. And also, I think this camera would largely benefit from the Animo and Bird Eye AF in both photo mode and video mode, just because this camera does have the 200mm lens on the long end. Now, here's the thing about the lens, right? I don't think the RX100 cameras will go back to the 24-70 f1.8 to 2.8. That lens is currently being carried by the ZV-1 right now. So I personally think it's okay that the RX100 will continue with the 24 to 200mm lens, but if they can physically widen that up to be a 24 to 200 f1.8 to 2.8, oh yeah, that would be better. But I don't know about that. Don't get your hopes up. But if not, at the very least, better high ISO performance, that would be great. For battery, I think it's gonna have to be the same one they've been using all this time. I don't think there's gonna be a change for that. Now, I didn't have too much of an issue with battery life on my Mark 7, largely due to the fact that the processor is helping it run more efficiently. But if there's an upgrade or update to this processor that can help it last longer and support 4K 60p, hell yeah, I will welcome it. Now, with all that said, does the RX100 need an update? Personal bias? Yes, but in terms of objective priority, it's probably not going to be the highest on the list based on these cameras I'm about to talk about. All right, I promised you we're gonna get into something different, so let's move on to the a7R Mark V. Now, I'm an OG a7R user, right? I started off with the R2, got the R3, even got the R4. It's one of my favorite line. Only barely recently has it been replaced by the Sony A1. But the last update to the a7R line was back in 2019, and I believe it was released a little too early. For one, we saw the a7R4 before we even saw the a7S III, which is not a terribly huge deal, but man, the menu. I think the R4 would have benefited with the new menu system. It was just a little too long on the tooth with the old one on something that is as good as the a7R4. I mean, it already pioneered a lot of the new stuff that we saw on the a7S III, the A1, and the a7 IV. It was the first camera to introduce the ability to save custom profile settings, and we even had a slight update to the creative looks profile, dual quick function menu for both photo mode and in video mode, and it even had custom video file names. Honestly, that would be the biggest thing. That'd be it, the new menu system. Now, aside from that, I don't want to be a broken record, right? But an updated eye autofocus with the support for Animo and Bird, it makes sense for a high resolution camera like this for those types of photography. And you know, all this time I've been stopping at 4K 60 on the other cameras, but for this one, I think it should get 4K 120p 10-bit 422. Does it really need it? Is it a video camera? Well, the a7R has always been a hybrid camera anyway, so why not? I think it should be there. And while we're at it, full-size HDMI. Yes, it needs it. Now, does it need a bump in megapixel? Honestly, personally, I think 60 is fine, but current a7R users, please let me know what you think. I already struggle with the 51 megapixel on my A1 and remember struggling with the 60 megapixels on the a7R4 in terms of file management. But for those of you who really need the higher end megapixels, right? Do we need to go higher? And what would you be using it for? And where should it stop? 72, 80, 100 megapixels? I mean, the A1 is already dangerously so close with its 51 megapixels, so I think the next a7R just has to focus on that higher megapixel rates to make itself different. But let me know, what else do you guys think this camera needs? And of course, writing those bigger files would be a pain, so obviously the next a7R should be using CF Express Type A cards. So would we see an a7R5 this year? I would say maybe. I mean, it's definitely the next in line to receive all those updates that I was talking about, so I would not be surprised. All right, my APS-C folks, don't worry, I did not forget about you guys. The next a6000 camera. Not sure what it's gonna be called. a6700, a6800, 69, nice. But I think I could speak for everyone that the next a6000 camera should have 4K 60p 10-bit 422 at an affordable price sub $1,000. Hey, don't give me that look. That's already half the price of the a7C, okay? That's affordable, but it'll likely be 1,000 plus 1 or 2, give or take. But APS-C has always been the lower cost of entry, and it can even rival the quality of full frame cameras especially with good glass. I was big on using my a6500 over my a7R II back in the day just because it's so small and it can do so much damage. But why stop at 4K 60p? Well, I'm just being realistic here because the a7 IV stops at 4K 60p, so I don't think they're gonna make the APS-C camera to have 4K 120 over the a7 IV. Now, while I don't 100% agree, I think the next a6000 camera will have a flip-out style screen. I personally love the flip-up style, but because of the more affordable pricing, it would attract folks who would prefer a flip-out style screen more. Broken record here, new menu, updated autofocus, Cinetone, megapixel bump. 33? Nah, keep it 24. What I really want to see is improved low light performance on the camera. That would be it. What about burst frames per second? You know, I think we can kind of move on from 11 frames per second to 15-ish frames per second, you know, make it a little bit more sportsy. Now 20 would be great. It's something that we've been asking for years now for the a6000 cameras, but hey, I'll settle for 15 or any sort of minor improvement on the frames per second burst. And with the higher frames per second, maybe CF Express Type A support, but I think we would definitely want to have that, especially if we're gonna get into the higher video recording territory as well. Okay, battery. You know how they were doing the a6400, a6600, basically the same cameras, but they used two different types of batteries? Well, I think the a6000 is ready to graduate fully over to the FC100 batteries. No more of this 2-3 model thing that's been happening in the a6000 line. That's because we now have the ZV-E series, which is now the entry-level interchangeable lens camera. Those can take the smaller batteries, but I think with the a6000 users, we are a wee bit more serious. We need that little bit of extra power, so an update to the a6600 with the IBIS is something that I think we can all look forward to. And by the way, it's weird. They launched two new APS-C lenses back in 2019, and one of which is the 16-55 f2.8G lens with no optical steady shot. I think the a6000 bodies moving forward should come with IBIS by default. Wouldn't you agree? Full-size HDMI for my video shooters. As long as it doesn't make the bodies any bigger, but I think it will likely stay micro HDMI like how it always has been. So I think it's fine if we don't get full-size HDMI. So what are the chances for us to see the next a6000 camera? Well, it definitely does deserve an update, so hopefully soon. But if they choose to work more on the ZV-E series instead, then I hope whatever stuff that we've talked about in this video will get thrown into that at least. Whatever shape or form that the a6000 has to come through, I just want these new updates to be in them. So let's finally move on to what I want to see in the a7C Mark II. So I definitely think there's a high chance we would see an a7C Mark II. Maybe not this year, end of this year might be being too hopeful, but next year would be more likely, as long as things are looking up. Now the a7C is sort of a direct miniature replica of the a7 III, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Mark II would be a direct one to the a7 IV. With that said, I would hope the a7C Mark II would not have the 4K 60p crop, but hey, I'm not holding my breath. Anyway, overall, I think we can all agree that the a7C has a growing popularity right now. Now, it's great that Sony is listening to their user feedbacks and giving us a lot of these improvements on the a7R, a7S, a7 IV, but over time, they really fatten up these cameras. Not every users need dual SD card slots, the bigger grip, the full-size HDMI, so yeah, do give us more smaller full-frame cameras. So, improvements. I think one of the biggest complaints about the a7C was the lack of custom buttons. It had less than the a6600, so yes, I agree, more buttons please. Another complaint is the LCD screen resolution. Now it's not that bad, but I mentioned in my review that if you punch in the check focus, you can tell if it is or it isn't in focus. But I wouldn't mind that slight bump though, to be honest with you. Broken record, new menu, updated autofocus features, Cinetone, 4K 10-bit 422, at least up to 60 frames per second. No crop at 4K 60p would be nice, but expect the crop. 33 megapixels, I mean, if it's gonna be a smaller a7 IV, then I think it will be 33 megapixels, but honestly, if they gave it to us as 24 megapixels, I wouldn't be mad. As far as upgrades go, that's pretty much it. In my review, I said I like the a7C's form factor, but what stopped me from loving it is that it's a generation behind. Once it gets those upgrades, I would be looking forward to the a7C Mark II. So the top 3 cameras that I would love to see an update for is realistically the next a6000 camera and the a7C Mark II, and my realistic pipe dream camera update would be the RX1R Mark III. All right, again, just a fun talking video, nothing too serious. If you guys enjoyed this video, you guys already know what to do. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.